Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Katherine Klimitas. Katherine is a New Orleans-based watercolor artist and founder of KAK Art Designs. Known for her vibrant, expressive pet and wildlife portraits, her work focuses on capturing personality, movement, and the emotional connection between people and the animals they love. A wheelchair user with Osteogenesis Imperfecta, Katherine brings a deep sense of resilience and joy to everything she creates. Rather than letting limitations define her, she channels her life experience into art that celebrates perseverance, individuality, and life's small, meaningful moments. Through custom commissions, limited edition prints, workshops, and public speaking, Katherine shares her belief that creativity is for everyone and that joy is always worth chasing. Oh, well, hi, Katherine. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm really excited and grateful to have you on this platform with me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Like I was saying,
Good.
I think you have such a beautiful and powerful story. I can't wait to just explore more of that with you. So I'm just starting off. You've said that diversity is my middle name, which I really love. So what does that phrase mean to you today?
Well, I think especially in today's world, it's important to be tolerant of all different types of people. Whether that's, disabled or different skin color or different religion or, all those differences. I think it's important to learn from people who are different. And be tolerant. Like even if it's not for you, as long as they're not pushing whatever they believe or whoever they are onto you and expecting you to change when you don't want to, then I mean it's fine.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you for sharing too. And I think you bring up an important point too. Like, how do you think we can go from just like tolerance to like more acceptance and having like folks, this diversity feel more like belonging though?
I mean, podcasts like this, just learning more, because I think too, especially with social media, I mean, I think people get ideas in their head that are not necessarily true.
Right.
They get these ideas of who somebody is or what somebody believes or a group of people or whatever, and they're basing their judgment on something that is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
And I mean, fact checking and stuff now, like you have to do it.
Yeah, no, totally. And, thank you for saying that, Tim. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with this podcast, like put the stories and human voices behind these like stereotypes and labels that we've been seeing. Cause I don't know, it's just like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like there's so much of that going on right now too, that I just want people to see us in our humanity rather than just in the labels or anything that might be put out there. So
definitely.
Yeah. Okay,
Definitely.
great. So, just growing up with osteogenesis imperfecta and attending mainstream schools, what shaped you the most during these years for you?
What shaped me the most?
Um,
Well, the people around me, of
okay.
course. I had great parents who made sure that I was as involved in school and, whatever I could be involved in as much as possible.
I love that.
And then I got really into art, which,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, but
Mhm.
that kind of became my thing. And today it's like my career and, and everything. And, yeah, I mean, I was really lucky. I went to a private uh, grade school
Okay.
that was more family oriented. It
Mhm.
was small. I think there were maybe 230 kids in the whole school from
Mhm.
kindergarten to eighth grade. So, my
Mhm.
graduating eighth grade class was like 18. So
Okay.
and most of us had grown up together. Most of the kids in that class had been
Yeah.
there from either kindergarten or first grade or second grade on.
Yeah.
So we knew each other well, and sometimes that was not a good thing, but most of the time, it was a good thing, and the teachers, really went out of their way to help students individually. Like
Yeah.
I was the only one with a physical disability
Mm-hmm.
in my school, really. But there were several with learning disability,
Okay.
that needed just some extra help and whatever. And they made sure
Yeah.
that everybody got that. So everybody got the chance to do well.
That's
And I
wonderful.
think, yeah, and I think just growing up in those years with that
Mhm.
was really helpful. And then I moved on to a public school that's more like a magnet school.
Okay.
Um, After that, much bigger. There were, I think,
Mhm.
maybe 900 kids in
Okay.
the school. I think our class was like 200 and something,
Okay.
but it shrunk because of Hurricane Katrina. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
but there were, it was a lot of people. But again, the class sizes were small,
Mm-hmm.
and the teachers went above and beyond,
Yeah.
to make sure that everybody got a chance. So, um, I think growing up in that environment really helped, you know.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And that's amazing what you said because I thought I went to a small high school, so I had like 400 students total and like 75 people in my graduating class. But when
Yeah.
you said you had like 18, and I think those small environments really do make a difference because
Especially when
yeah.
you're young, you
Right,
know?
right, right.
Yeah.
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 No,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And there were, like, it was understood that um there were some different things people had to do around me. Like I
Okay.
was gonna have an aide with me all the time, and like they couldn't throw a ball at me. I mean,
Mm,
like just different things. And it was understood, but not like called out all the time. You know what I mean?
okay,
It was
right.
not like the focus of me, but it was said like,
Okay.
hey, don't hurt her,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never really felt super. I mean, there were a couple of instances, of course,
Okay.
where I felt kind of left out, but not a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry you had to experience that too. But, do you feel that those early, like childhood experiences or when you were growing up, did they help to shape the worldviews that you have today?
Oh, for sure.
How so? I'd
Yeah.
love to hear about it.
Definitely. Yes,
Okay.
definitely. I mean, you talked about acceptance,
Uh-huh.
and tolerance earlier, and I mean, I would say my grade school was less diverse,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's really just a function of the fact that it was really expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and it just like it catered to a certain level, of income, and it just wasn't as diverse as like the public school was,
Mm-hmm.
as
Right.
as advanced as the public school was. And we talked about this the other day. I was talking about this with a friend the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we were all different, our
Uh-huh.
common thing was that we were all really smart,
Okay,
because
that's
that
cool.
was the thing, is like
Right.
you had to get into this school. Like it was
Yeah.
tough. And I mean, I worked harder at that school than I did in college, by
Uh-huh.
far.
Okay.
Like, um,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just having that diversity as a young person, I think makes you more accepting. I think a lot of kids who grew up, um, and I'm going back generations. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily today, but especially kids that you know go to all white girl Catholic schools.
Right.
Like they
Mm-hmm.
may not be as accepting, um as somebody like me who went to a school that
Right.
has everybody. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and again, that's just probably a bad example, but
No, I
you know
totally
what
know
I'm
what you
getting
mean.
at.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. But it's
It
the more
was
you're exposed to different like people, different communities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was interesting because that's the example I used, because this particular high school
Uh-huh.
had a principal come in several years ago, after they had
Mhm.
had a principal for a long time. That lady retired, and they had another guy come in from a
Okay.
completely different state. Like he wasn't from Louisiana. He didn't know the Louisiana culture, and he had
Oh.
been in an all white girl Catholic school, and
Oh,
it
okay.
just did not work. Like it
Yeah.
just he didn't have that a way to um make that variety of people work. Like he
Oh,
just it
okay.
just didn't. And because at the school, as diverse as the student population is, the
Right.
faculty is just as much. And
Okay,
so,
that's cool.
like coming into that from where he was just not, it just didn't work.
Yeah. And
I'm
like
sure
you were
he did.
saying how like the staff is also diverse. I think that really makes it
Yeah,
important as well to like have people who are serving you like reflect like the people. Yeah, that's
exactly.
really. Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, like the Spanish teacher was from Cuba, the
Okay.
French teacher was from Paris. I mean,
Okay.
like
That's
that
cool.
kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. No, thank you for sharing that. I'd love to hear that. And I'd love to talk with you about your art now. So when did you
Sure.
first realize that art wasn't just something that you enjoyed, but this was something that could also like carry you and support you?
Well, I sold my first painting when I was 10. That's
Okay.
actually kind of a funny story.
Wow, that's cool.
My art teacher in grade school, who
Mm-hmm.
really got me started creatively,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily formally, but taught me
Mm-hmm.
that I could create things, which was, a big step.
Right.
Um, he, I don't remember the exact circumstances, but there was some benefit going on for a
Mm-hmm.
dog thing for the SPCA or something. And it was at this real swanky gallery downtown, and they were having kids from all
Uh-huh.
over, I think, do paintings and sculpture and other pieces of art or whatever that they were going to auction off as,
Okay.
as the fundraiser. And
Okay.
so he had me do this giant painting, which
Uh-huh.
I'll never do again. But anyway, he had me do this giant painting, and it was called All Dogs Go to Heaven. And it was,
Okay.
huge. And I had to like lay on it to paint it and it whole
Wow.
thing. Okay. And he put it in this fundraiser. Well, my dad went
Mm.
and bid on it. And
Oh.
I don't know what he bid on it. I think he bid like $100 on it.
Uh-huh.
And then, now keep in mind, this is like in the 90s. Okay.
Okay.
So he bid like $100. And
Mm-hmm.
then somebody else came behind him and outbid him. And he would
Wow.
not go up. And
Okay.
so my first painting was not sold to anybody in my family. I mean,
Oh,
I know the
wow.
person. I
Okay.
now know the person who got it. But like,
Okay.
yeah, I was like, really, Dad? He's like, that's too much money for that. I'm like, seriously?
Oh,
Anyway,
wow. Wow.
so that's the first painting I sold. And then my
Okay.
parents are veterinarians, so I
Uh-huh.
used to go to work with them on Saturdays
Mm-hmm.
because I had to. And
Uh-huh.
I would sit in the waiting room and draw people's pets while they
Okay.
were waiting, just because I was bored. Like,
Okay.
not because I wanted to make money, but then somebody started offering me money. Like, they'd
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I gotta go, but if I give you a picture, will you do, Fluffy for $20?" And I mean,
Wow. That's
as a
cool.
12-year-old, 20
Wow.
bucks in the 90s was like super exciting, you
Uh-huh.
know? And so then I just kept doing it. Like
Right.
I took more classes and I took a lot of private lessons where I actually learned like
Mm-hmm.
how to do art for real, like the
Yeah.
real, lessons that you're supposed to learn as an artist.
Yeah.
The hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um and yeah, and then it just went from there.
That's really cool. I was wondering though, like as a young child, would you have even imagined that this would be something that would carry you through like, yeah,
I don't
your life?
know. I really wanted, okay, so I
Uh-huh.
was really big into Free Willy when I
Okay.
was a kid.
I
That was like my
remember that
favorite
movie.
movie. I still
Okay.
love that movie.
Okay.
Okay. But I was really, really into it, and I really wanted to be a killer whale trainer, which of course
Uh-huh.
there's so many problems with that idea that anyway, like so many technical problems with that idea. But anyway, I was like, oh, and then it was marine biologist because I think at
Okay.
some point every child wants to be a marine biologist. I don't know why, but I feel like everybody goes through that phase.
Okay.
Then it was marine biologist, and then I was like, well, I really like this art thing, and I hear
Yeah.
people can make money from it, but when
Okay.
I got into college,
Mm-hmm.
um, I really by the time I got to college, I was already doing shows and
Oh,
festivals
wow.
and
Okay.
like things like that were just private.
Mm-hmm.
Or like we have an event here in New Orleans called Art for Art's Sake, and it's like
Okay.
all the galleries on one street open, and
Mm-hmm.
it's you walk the street basically, like
Yeah.
and they serve champagne, and a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
galleries serve food and all that stuff. So if you can get a spot there, like I would have a spot there every year.
Yeah.
And I was doing pet portraits on and off, but none of that was going to be enough money to
Mm-hmm.
like to live on. I mean, they're not even
Right.
close,
Right.
So when I got into college, I started really thinking about it. And the prereqs for both fine art and graphic design are the same.
Okay.
And so at the end of my freshman year, I started kind of looking more at graphic design, and I was like, well, this is
Yeah.
at least I mean, there was no reason I couldn't continue to paint. Like that
Yeah.
was, still fine. I said, maybe I need to look at switching to
Yeah.
graphic design, which is what I did. So,
Okay.
and so formally, I'm trained as a graphic designer. So
Okay. Okay.
I do like a lot of branding, logos and business
Mm-hmm.
cards and stuff like that. And then I mean, not recently, but I'd say within the last 5 or 6 years, a
Okay.
lot of my business is social media management because
Okay.
that's what people need right now.
Yeah, definitely. Right.
People aren't printing invitations anymore, and they're not,
Mm-hmm.
they're emailing them or they're putting them out on Facebook or
Yeah.
so those are the things that I do mostly
Okay.
for a few different clients, and then I still do my art. Like I have a series
Yeah.
of shows coming up this year, but I try to I try to split it in half.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't always work.
Okay.
Um, you know, I try,
Yeah.
but a design often takes over because unfortunately that is what makes the money. You know,
Right.
and
Right.
that's just the way it goes. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. And, I wanted to bring up too. So you've shared that when you couldn't participate physically, you turned to art. So what did you feel that
Mhm.
art gave to you that you weren't able to find, in other places?
It was just something to do.
Okay.
Honestly,
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's how I started with art. Mom was always trying to find things that I could do as a
Mm-hmm.
kid because there were so many moments where it was like,
Uh-huh.
my friends were out playing softball or they
Mm-hmm.
were on roller coasters at an amusement park or
Okay.
they were swimming in a pool that I couldn't get in. I mean, whatever
Right.
it
Right.
was. And so um if there wasn't a way for me to participate in what they were doing, she
Mm-hmm.
was trying to find other things. So she gave me a watercolor set, like a cheap, those cheap
Okay.
cakey ones that you get for kids that
Uh-huh.
come with a brush and they're like the
Right.
little
Yes.
ovals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she gave me one of those when I was about 5, and
Okay.
I loved it. And
Wow.
I went through it really quickly, and I, yeah, it kind of went from there. She let me
Yeah.
graduate to nice watercolors
Okay.
after I had a lot of practice. Maybe around 8 or 9, like for real
Yeah.
watercolors, because they're expensive. I mean,
Right.
they're not cheap.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn how to, manage the amount of color I squeeze out and, that kind of
Uh-huh.
stuff.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. That's really cool. And, do you feel like your disability has also helped to shape your artistic voice in any way?
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it's a part of everything I do.
Right.
So, I mean, it has to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
has
and
to.
how do you feel that it does show up in your art?
Um, I don't know that it shows up
Okay.
in the sense that you're saying. I think
Yeah.
it's more just that I do it because
Yeah.
of
No,
it.
that's cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, that
Um,
makes sense. No, no, and I think, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to offend her. It's more that, like, because I think, like, self-expression is also really important to me. And
yeah.
I also actually identify as a person with a hidden disability, though. And it's just like the way that I, like, tell my stories and stuff. So it's just like shame. So it might not be like a piece specifically on disability or anything, but yeah, do you feel like use your art as a way of self-expression as well?
Yeah, I mean, my art focuses on animals, and I love
Yeah.
animals.
No, that's cool.
You
That's
know,
cool.
like I said, I grew up with two parents who were veterinarians, so
Uh-huh.
I've never not had a pet. I mean,
Uh-huh.
well, let me rephrase that. I've never
Hmm.
not had multiple pets. I think
Okay.
the least we've ever had is three, and that lasted about 2 months.
Okay.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we usually have a lot. Right now, we have 5 dogs, and it's insanity. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
um, but but
Yeah.
yes, uh, yeah. So I mean, that's the focus of my art, and that's not surprising because
Yeah.
that's, I loved going to the zoo when I was little and going to the aquarium, and just my parents taught me respect for all
Hmm.
animals, kind of
I
thing.
love that.
And the difference between like a wild animal and a domesticated animal, and even with domesticated animals, I mean, they're
Yeah.
still animals, and you still have to give them, respect when needed,
Hmm.
kind of thing. And I think that shows up in my art. I
Yeah.
think like the idea that every animal has a personality and a
Hmm.
voice. I think
Uh-huh.
that shows up in my art for sure.
No, no,
Now
that's
I
really
say
cool.
respect. I
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I am on board with respecting cockroaches or mosquitoes.
You
Although
don't
I
think
have
it?
painted both.
Oh, you
I don't
have.
know.
Okay.
I have. It
That's
was for
cool.
a series a couple years ago, but
Uh-huh.
however, I don't know if I can get on board with that one. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, that's cool. Something that's really important to me too is like amplifying voices, specifically like marginalized voices. So,
Hmm.
how do you feel like art can, or any other forms of self-expression, like be a way of amplifying marginalized voices?
Well, the whole idea behind it is that you get a message out to a lot of people at one time. I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's art, music, poetry,
Right.
spoken word. I mean, all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Comedy. I mean, I think that that's just the idea. Is you
Uh-huh.
you reach more people. Um,
Right.
I think it's sad when, because I've known some artists like this where they do art, but it's so personal to them
Mm-hmm.
that they refuse to share it, even though it's
Oh,
so
okay.
good and there's a really good message behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I'm not going to say it's a waste because I know that it's good for them,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a waste in that they're not sharing it with anybody else, and
Yeah.
changing somebody else's life, kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
thank you for sharing that. That's actually something I wanted to ask you about too. So, have you felt that way where like a piece of art that you created might like inspire or like help to change another person's life?
I'm going to go back to what I just
Uh-huh.
said,
Yeah.
which is I think that it's more about my story and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily the
Totally.
piece, and specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, that's really cool. And, if you're comfortable talking about this, because something that I want to do about with this podcast too is like as I was telling you, tell the stories behind different communities and stuff. So what misconceptions about wheelchair users or people with brittle bone
Oh,
disease do you feel like you most want to challenge or like help to bring more awareness around?
I mean, there's several.
Okay. Okay.
um, the first one is that people often think I have a mental disability because I'm in a
Right.
wheelchair. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and that's common, right? I mean, that happens to every person in a wheelchair pretty much.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's just not true. I mean, it's just not
Right.
necessarily, even people who are not able to speak, it doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
they're, mentally, less than, anyway.
Right.
That's frustrating to me. Because it's definitely, there's no
Mm-hmm.
equality there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I often get, everybody thinks, not everybody, let me rephrase that.
Mm-hmm.
There are many people who look
Okay.
at me and say, "Oh, look at that cute little baby." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
no, that's
"Yeah,
offensive.
no,
No.
yeah, yeah, that one's annoying." And I have a lot of
Yeah.
ways to answer that, some of which are appropriate and some of which are not. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, I that one annoys me as well.
Well, how do you respond in those situations? Actually, because as we spoke before my recording, I had someone else who had osteogenesis imperfecta, and I'd see her get those similar comments as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Um, I mean, usually I just say something like, no, not, I'm
Hmm.
37,
Right,
thanks, whatever.
right.
Um, and kind of to go with that one, a
Hmm.
lot of times people will talk to my aide and not to
Okay,
me. Like they'll
right.
say, what does she want to eat? Or,
Oh,
oh, what's
okay.
wrong with her? Or
Yeah.
what can I do? Whatever. And that's frustrating too.
Uh-huh.
And my aides are usually like, I don't know, ask her. You
Uh-huh.
know, like
I
she's,
know.
yeah.
Right.
So that happens a lot too.
Yeah, no, this as we were talking, I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions because actually I used to work at the Center for Independent Living or CIL in Berkeley, and I was their job developer. And yeah, I was just in shock about what kind of things these employers were actually saying, managers too. They were saying like, oh, when I'd be like, just trying to promote like, hey, would you hire people with disabilities? We have a lot of great qualified candidates. They'd make comments like, oh, don't they think too slow or don't they move too slow? It's just like I feel like it's just these like assumptions that people have. And also like what you
Yeah.
were talking about, I had another guest who also said something similar to you that like having physical disability doesn't mean that impacts you intellectually as well though. But I think people do
Right.
make that connection sometimes.
Right. Now, I mean, that being said, what you were saying about the employers, I
Hmm.
chose to run my own business
Okay.
instead of being hired by like a design firm or
Hmm.
something like that. I
Right.
got those jobs,
Okay.
out of college. I was accepted into those jobs, but
Uh-huh.
for me, physically, it is a lot easier to work from home.
Right.
And when I graduated college, I was 2011, and there wasn't, COVID really changed the whole work from home thing, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it really pushed people to be able to work from home more,
Uh-huh.
which is one good thing that came out of, for me at least, it's one good,
Hmm.
because we can do things like this, we can do
Right.
Zoom and all that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but and I think for a lot of people with disabilities, it helped a lot
Uh-huh.
in that way. But,
Okay.
for me to get up and go to a job every day,
Hmm.
and like have to get in the car and have to figure out like people getting me in the car and who's going to get here before, I have to be there, and then who's staying with me all day, and
Hmm.
is there space? Like I lay down to work. So is there a
Okay.
table for me to lay down on? And, like it gets, and then if it's a day where I'm really not feeling well,
Hmm.
like to the point of I can't put on real clothes, like
Uh-huh.
then how do I go to my job? I like it gets very complicated. Um
Yeah.
so, I chose that. But that
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean that I shouldn't not have I mean, I should have the choice,
Right.
of one or the other.
Yeah, no, actually, that leads me into the next question that I had. So, in your opinion, what do you think that true accessibility can really look like beyond ramps, elevators, or, physical accommodations? Like, how
Mm.
can things become like truly accessible?
Well, I think all of those things are very important.
Right, right.
Um, I think that, okay, let's just
Hmm.
take a group of like able bodied people for a second.
Hmm.
Let's just say, there's a group of able bodied people. They're all different heights, all different weights, all different ethnicities, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, let's say that one of these people is 70 years old, but they're looking for
Hmm.
a job, but they're not very strong physically. But
Okay.
then you've got another kid just out of college who just needs a job, a quick job, but he's strong and he's, whatever.
Hmm.
He's more likely to get a job stocking shelves at Walmart than she is.
Uh-huh.
And that's okay. Like, that's okay. This is
Uh-huh.
this is where I have a problem with I think sometimes people's perception of equality goes a little bit too far. I think
Okay.
like you shouldn't. I mean, yes, the 70-year-old should be able to um apply for that job, but
Hmm.
clearly she's not going to be the best one for it. You know
Okay.
what I mean? So,
Right,
and I
right.
don't think like companies should get in trouble because
Hmm.
they don't hire a certain person because of their skin color or their gender or their whatever. Like
Uh-huh.
that's ridiculous. And I think
Yeah.
it also that goes over to people with disabilities. Like, I
Mhm.
would not apply for a job as a stalker at Walmart.
Okay, right,
I mean,
right.
like,
Yeah.
why would I do that? And so, I mean, I think, yeah, you should have the option, I guess, to apply, but not get super upset when you don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm
Yeah, no, that
probably.
makes sense. But I'm also thinking like, when it comes to like people being more inclusive with people with disabilities, making those accommodations. But I think for me too, like I'd love to see it taking it a step further, not just, just making the actual hire, but also encouraging, people with disabilities to take like leadership positions and
Oh
stuff
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's, yeah, I mean, I used Walmart as an example because it's so
Yeah.
basic, but I mean, like,
Right.
if there is a person who's
Yeah.
qualified to be president of the United States,
Hmm.
but they're a paraplegic, I mean, that's fine. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, I don't, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we were talking about earlier, this perception of people with disabilities can't do those kinds of things. There are people with certain disabilities that can't,
Hmm.
but that's not
Right.
everybody. It's not a blanket statement.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, it's just like disability can be like a whole spectrum as well. So even with
Right.
myself, I actually was just talking with a friend about this this morning, but like just like I have to recognize also my privilege though, because I can like choose or not to disclose like my invisible disability if
Hmm.
I want to, but not everyone with disabilities, physical or mental can have that. So yeah, I think that's one thing
Right.
that I've also challenged, like, this is how I identify, but also like how can I help to amplify voices or help to uplift like other people with disabilities as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really cool your story, just how you help to, or you basically work to carve your own path, entrepreneurship and everything. And I'd love for you just to, share your opinions or just advice with the listeners. So, what advice would you give to creatives with disabilities who want to build something of their own? Like, yeah, where should they start, or how do you suggest that they even go about this?
Well, one of the things is have a really good support system
Okay.
and good people around you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, beyond like my family and my close friends, have, if you need aides, have really good ones.
Okay.
If you need like a CPA, have a
Okay.
CPA. Like, don't try to do it yourself if you don't know how to do it.
Okay.
I am a proponent of hire. If you don't know how to do something and you're
Mm-hmm.
not an expert in it, you should hire the person that does and
Okay.
then trust them. You know,
Yeah.
um, because yeah, I hired a bookkeeper. I am
Uh-huh.
terrible with numbers. Like, I am so bad
Same
with
here.
that. And like,
Yeah.
taxes scare the bejesus out. Like, I don't want to handle my own taxes. That gives me
Yeah.
so much anxiety, you know?
Uh-huh.
Um, so
Mhm.
yeah, so that kind of thing. That's a big one. And then, like, there is going to be failure no matter
Uh-huh.
what. Like, no
Uh-huh.
matter what, you're going to put money into something and you're going
Yeah.
to lose it at some point,
Right.
and that's probably, there are going to be things you win too.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be like really good situations where you put money into something and it takes off, and it does
Uh-huh.
really well. But you don't really know unless you try.
Yeah.
You just make your best guess and learn as much as you can before you do it.
Yeah.
And then but at a certain point you have to just try it, you know.
Yeah. No, I love that too. And I know that you spoke about this earlier in our conversation, but I'd love to explore this more with you. But what was the process for you, like building a business? Do you feel like you had like other models to look after, or
Oh
like,
yeah. So,
even like hiring a bookkeeper? Did you feel like you
oh
had
yeah.
the steps, or like were you figuring it out as you were
No, no,
going?
no. Well, a
Okay.
little bit of both, but
Okay.
less of the figuring it out as I went, because I grew
Okay.
up with two parents who had veterinary businesses.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
they each had their own practice. So like,
Okay.
my dad's practice was very well established,
Uh-huh.
and older than my mom's. So
Mhm.
I don't really remember him establishing his business, because I was like two when
Uh-huh.
he started it. So like the years where he was building things, I was too young to really
Uh-huh.
understand that. Anyway, my mom though, started
Mhm.
her business when I was 6 or 7.
Uh-huh.
And so I was old enough to
Mhm.
understand, oh, she's at least to the point of, oh, there's certain paperwork you have to have,
Okay.
and you need a
Okay.
lawyer, and you
Mm.
need, to file this with taxes. And she gets
Yeah.
really grouchy around April 15th,
Okay.
for a reason,
Right.
like, um, you know,
Yeah.
there's inventory that has to be counted at the end of the year.
Uh-huh.
Like things like that. I grew up going to my dad's office on Saturdays, and I would count cash at the end of the day,
Mhm.
because I was old enough to do it.
Yeah.
And it was the 90s, so everybody used cash, you know.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't even have a credit card machine
Okay.
until I was,
Yeah,
at
I
least
noticed that
10.
when things start changing because I used to always be like, "Oh, I can't buy these because I don't have cash." But then I saw those like square things that people used
Yeah.
to have and how you could start using cards at like these
Yeah.
booths and stuff. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. No, my dad passed away like 13 years ago or something.
Okay. I'm
No,
sorry to hear
almost
that.
more than that. 14 years ago, almost.
Okay.
Um, but he would be just like baffled today. Like
Okay.
he would have no idea how to handle
Yeah.
any of that. Like
Okay.
when I started my business, he was still alive, and he wanted me to use a handwritten ledger on
Oh.
all of my checking. And I'm like, this is not going to happen.
Oh,
This
no.
is not going to happen. We're getting
Okay.
QuickBooks. There's no
Quick
way.
book, yeah.
I'm sorry. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I really
So,
like that.
but I mean, so things like that. The other part to that is that my parents already had
Uh-huh.
CPAs and bookkeepers, and although we've not had, there's been a few that have not been good.
Uh-huh.
Um, at least, like, I mean, my dad knew everybody. Like he was
Okay.
so well established that he had a client for everything.
Okay. That's
So
cool.
if you need an electrician, he had a client for that. If you need a
Uh-huh.
plumber, and like everything. So
Mhm.
it it wasn't hard to find the right people,
Okay.
to help, especially
Uh-huh.
in the beginning. Um, so being well connected, or knowing somebody who's well connected,
Yeah.
is really really helpful. Um, yeah.
Okay, cool. No, thank you for sharing this. And, I think I saw this in your bio, but you talk about chasing joy. So what does that mean for you?
Um, Basically what it says. Just I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of things that people have to do in this world now that don't make you happy. So
Uh-huh.
if you have the chance,
Okay.
you should, you know, do things that do make you happy. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a balance, right?
Right.
Again, especially with social media. I mean,
Hmm.
it polarizes people, you
Yeah.
know,
No,
and
definitely.
and not and it polarizes people half the time over things that are not even true, you
Right.
know,
Right.
which is ridiculous, you know.
I yeah, just this lack of fact checking. It just baffles me sometimes. I don't know.
And
Sometimes,
I've gotten to the point where even fact checking, like,
Uh-huh.
can you trust the fact
Right.
checker?
Oh,
You know,
that's true.
because everything's AI now.
Right.
Everything is so
Right.
AI driven that, like, how can you tell what's true and what's not?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, so I, generally speaking, on the news and other
Hmm.
things people post and whatever, I just, like, I listen to it and I absorb it, but then I'm like, I don't know how true that is. I'm going to just take that with a grain of salt, kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Right. No, totally. I think I've been trying to learn more myself too, like how to choose joy because I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
things that are out of our control right now, but how in these moments can I still find that joy what gives me like hope and motivation to keep on going rather than
yeah,
like being like drowned in all this negativity. So,
exactly.
yeah. So
And
I'm learning it
also,
myself too.
yeah,
Mhm.
and things like setting boundaries.
Right.
Like that's a big
Right.
one. Just say no sometimes.
Yeah.
I did that a few times last week.
Okay.
you
I
know,
know. Right.
like it was like, nope, I can't do it right now.
Yeah.
Um, and it I think people who usually say yes actually
Hmm.
say no, and then the world doesn't end. It's
Right.
surprising. you know?
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's actually a good example, just a little bit about myself. So I used to just be like really driven and like afraid to like let people down and stuff and keep working. I literally worked myself until I got really sick. And
Yeah.
actually because I was like, I don't want to let people down. And I kept doing that. And I actually got so sick to the point where I had to be hospitalized. Yeah, be in the hospital. And then like I was out of work for like 3 months because I got
Oh
so sick. And
man.
then it's like, no, the world kept going. And I think that was a really wake up call. Like, I need to take care of myself like day to day because
Hmm.
if I get that sick again, it's harder for people than, to like take care of myself day by day and, just keep myself joyful and not burn
Yeah.
myself out.
And I mean, I think that it's really easy for like doctors and veterinarians and people in the healthcare industry to get like that,
Yeah.
because it is life and death. A lot of their stuff is life and death. And so
Yeah.
for them to get burned out is really easy because they
Right.
are really important,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But like, really seriously, a graphic design emergency, it doesn't really exist. I
Oh,
mean,
that's true.
yes, there may be a deadline that gets missed,
Yeah.
but it's not like, you know, somebody dies
Yeah.
because,
Right.
you missed the print deadline, which
No,
I
that's
generally do not. But,
right.
you
Right.
know, just in the off chance that it happens,
Yeah. No, my
you know,
supervisor used to say that too. She would say like, we're not brain surgeons. Same thing with you. Like people
exactly.
aren't going to die if we
No,
miss this deadline.
no. And I think you get
Yeah.
so involved. Like, if you're good at what you do,
Right.
and people, and you're in demand,
Mm-hmm.
and you get so involved in that you forget, like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I mean, if this person doesn't get their pet portrait immediately, it
Yeah.
is what it is. Like, oh well, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I'll work it out.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
yeah.
love that. So, something else that I want to do with this podcast is show people how they can be better in solidarity with other communities they might not necessarily identify with, but still like taking a stand with folks. So, with that, how can able-bodied allies better show up for the disability community?
Oh, I mean, I think things like this, listening to things like this,
Okay.
um, changing behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Like next
Right.
time you see somebody in a wheelchair, don't
Mm-hmm.
automatically assume they're mentally disabled.
Right.
Talk to them, not their aid. It's really mostly about how you interact with people with disabilities, I think. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to change. And one of the things that I'm a big, like, I open my mouth probably too loudly about sometimes, is concert seating for people with
Oh,
disabilities, people
okay.
in wheelchairs.
Right.
Because I'm a big fan of live music. I love
That's
live
cool.
music.
No, same
That's
here.
that's my like that's my hobby.
Uh-huh.
I look forward to my next concert. That's how I
Okay.
live, kind of thing. And
Right.
so a lot of times in venues,
Mm-hmm.
all the wheelchair seating's in the back.
Right.
And why would you put somebody who can't stand up
Right.
behind a bunch of people that can?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Do you think that venues are getting better at that? Because I've also noticed that myself, but
So,
something that I noticed because like I went to a cruise actually and I felt like their accessibility seating was like really good the whole time, like had it up at the front and everything. But I feel like the majority of venues is what you explained. But have you seen like positive? Like, do you think there are
yeah,
venues
I
that are
mean,
getting
there are
better?
some.
Okay.
Honestly, Red Rocks is one of the best. I
Okay.
mean, they're fabulous.
Okay.
That we have a theater here that's very good. There's like
Uh-huh.
my my thing is like, it shouldn't matter if you are in a wheelchair or not, if you have the money to spend on the expensive tickets. Like, there
Mm,
should
yeah.
be, and actually, I think that it says this in ADA law, but there should be an option
Okay.
if the person in the wheelchair can physically get to the seat. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Like, if they can physically, like, if there's no stairs, or, like, there's a way for them to
Okay.
physically get to the seat, you should be able to spend the money to sit in the front row if
Mm-hmm.
you want to,
Right.
if you're in a wheel. Like, there
Yeah.
should be an option for front row, back of the orchestra, second level, whatever. Like, there should be options at all price
Ah,
threat levels,
okay.
because and I'm not
Yeah.
saying there has to be a ton of them,
Right.
but, it should be an option,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and venues get really freaky about it, and
Mhm.
I'm constantly yelling about it,
Uh-huh.
because I'll buy tickets that are not accessible in the front row, and I'll
Oh,
be like, well,
wow.
y'all got to figure it out.
Okay.
This law says that you have to, and they most of the time do. There
Okay.
are some times that, they don't, and then that's an issue,
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And no, I'm just wondering though, so how do you hope that your work impacts children who are growing up with disabilities today?
Um, well, I mean, I hope that it gives them hope.
Yeah.
Like it's
Uh-huh.
it's hard to be a kid with a disability. Like
Yeah.
every kid has something, right, that makes it hard to grow up, but because growing up is just hard in
Mhm.
general. But it is difficult when you're the only one, you
Uh-huh.
know? And so I mean, I think, again, I mean, this is a plus of social media. Like, there are groups now for people with OI, like,
Okay.
and like support type groups where we can just talk about, what we're
Yeah.
doing for exercise or what we're eating or like what's helping us and what's not helping us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and and I think that's really good. And I think kids, the fact that they're gonna have access to that,
Yeah.
is really good because we didn't. I mean, I knew I knew 2 other people with OI growing up, and
Okay.
one was older than I was, and one was younger.
Okay.
And I mean, I saw them both like a handful of times out of the year,
Okay.
maybe 3 or 4 times out of the
Uh-huh.
year, and that was it. So like I never identified really with like the disabled community as a whole,
Yeah. No, no,
you
I know
know.
what you mean. Yeah, no, totally. And this is a little related to, I think with me too, like I felt like I grew up in a really diverse area, but like I was always one of the very few Asian Americans, but I
Mhm.
was always like the only Japanese American. I think when I grew older,
Mm.
I like developed more of like an Asian American identity, as that whole too. And, I've also done a lot of work with the disability community and having more of that connection too. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know, but I could say like having those connections with other people who are like you, at least with me, it was like incredibly helpful though to share our
yeah.
stories with each other.
It's much easier as an adult,
Right,
because as an
right.
adult, you advocate for
Yeah.
yourself and like
Uh-huh.
you choose who you want to be around, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just easier as an adult, I think,
Yeah,
personally.
no, I think so too. And that's why I wanted to ask that question too, because I hope that it's easier for like children growing up too. And I think we do have a long way to go, but I'm glad, like you were
Yeah.
talking to, I love, having these kind of conversations and hopefully just more awareness or like people I guess doing better than in the past of supporting our the newer generations coming.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, I think that school inclusion has come a really long way. I mean, I
Okay.
think it's got a long way to go, but
Mm-hmm.
like, including kids that even if they are kids, like let's just say there's a kid with a mental disability that can't necessarily be in regular classes, but
Uh-huh.
they could be in PE
Mm-hmm.
maybe, or they could be at recess, or they could be, in some way included in the regular population, the
Uh-huh.
able-bodied population, so that A, they get that social interaction, which is
Mm-hmm.
really good for them, but B, the able-bodied population is not, especially as a kid, if you learn this as a kid, it's great. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't have any they don't develop judgments early, about people in wheels. Like they learn
Right.
how to interact with them early,
Yeah.
so like as an adult, they don't look stupid
Uh-huh.
because, because they learned this early, right? Like
Right.
kids in my class, one of
Okay.
my best friends lives in Denver, and we grew up, let's see, I think first grade, so we were
Okay.
like 6. Um, but anyway, like, she's like, "Yeah, I mean, you had some different things about you, but you were just Catherine to
Mm.
us. Like, you
Yeah.
weren't, anything special.
Right.
Like, you got in trouble with the rest of us, and,
Uh-huh.
like, you were just
Yeah.
and so, like that's important. And I think creating
Yeah.
that kind of environment is important.
Yeah. No, I really love that. But thank you so much for your time. I had such a
Yeah.
wonderful time talking with you today. But just in closing out and in the spirit of Voices That Propel Us, what voice, this could be either, within yourself or maybe people around you, has propelled you forward when things felt really challenging?
Oh, it's usually my mother.
Okay, that's cool.
That's easy. Yeah, she is very much a realist
Okay.
and a I don't want to say that. She's
Uh-huh.
she's very motivated and
Okay.
she expects everyone around her to be very motivated.
Mm,
So she is not somebody that would ever really let me feel entitled or sorry for myself or
yeah.
any of those things. So, you know, um
Yeah.
when anytime, and still, anytime I'm like, I can't do it, she's like, yes, you can, more or
Uh-huh.
less. That's not usually what she says, but that's what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
Okay.
So yes. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely her. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Thank you again for your time. But just lastly, how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you or maybe even look through your art?
Yeah. So my website is KAK, my
Uh-huh.
initials, KAK
Okay.
artnola.com.
Uh-huh.
And then my Instagram and Facebook handles are both KAK Art Nola as well.
Okay. Okay,
So yeah.
cool. No, well, thank you again. Are there any other messages that you'd like to leave with my listeners or anything else that you wanted to bring up that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
know. I feel like we covered it.
Yeah, no, you're
Mhm.
such a beautiful person. And, I truly wish you the best as you're moving forward
Thank you.
and continuing to grow your business. But thank you for being an inspiration. So,
Yeah.
I think just like we were talking, like just people hearing your story, hopefully even
Yeah.
younger people who can see like how you've like really thrived, like hopefully that can give them the courage and, strength to also like pursue whatever dreams that they have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Well, thank you again.
All
And I
right.
hope to keep in touch. And, I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
Yes, you too.
Okay. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
Every time I feel so mad and sad and bad, I say to myself, relax, lean back.